to order the city council meeting for October 13th, 2022. Everyone please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Dave Webb. Here. Kevin Kadada.
Here.
Tim Rude.
Here.
Cindy Fuhr.
Here.
And Scott Palava.
Here.
Okay, tonight's agenda goes through 10E. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda as presented.
Councilperson Fuhr,
Second.
Councilman Palava. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are no minutes, no public hearings, presentation of citizens' petitions and comments. Comments limited to 2 minutes. Now is your opportunity to speak if you're not on the agenda. Okay, there's nothing on the consent agenda, there is no old business. On to new business. Consider approval of resolution 2022-47, a resolution transferring an amount not to exceed $45,000 from Fund 609 to Fund 404 for the purchase of a 2022 John Deere Gator and attachments. Mr. Erickson.
All right, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. During the city's 2023 budget process, it was determined that purchasing some type of a UTV vehicle was a priority because it'd be more efficient than using other equipment for snow plowing, trail maintenance, other things like that, watering the Main Street flowers, or fertilizing them, plowing, landscaping, things like that. Staff obtained a quote from Minnesota Machinery for a John Deere Gator with the plow in the amount of $33,118.77. This was presented to and approved by the council at the last meeting. At that meeting, the council discussed the best way to fund it. Options were use reserves, a transfer from the liquor store, or use reserves and reimburse ourselves through the sale of equipment certificates. Seemed like the direction the council was going was a transfer from the liquor store. So the liquor store committee at our meeting last Tuesday reviewed this and recommended approval of an amount not to exceed $45,000 to account for the purchase of the gator, the plow, and then a couple other attachments, a tank for whether it's chemicals, water, things like that, and a receiver mounted sander for the back for trails. I believe staff did get quotes for those, and it was around about $5,000. So we're looking at just under $40,000, but just to be consistent, the resolution's done, and we just wrote the check out for $45,000. The liquor committee's made it a goal to have a fund balance of at least $200,000. As of writing this memo, the fund balance, at the time of August 31st, was just over $450,000. We did get the financials done for the liquor store for $930,000, and I want to say it was like $462,000 or $463,000. So definitely an ample surplus to allow this transfer to take place. The fiscal impact would be a reduction in the liquor fund's fund balance of not to exceed $45,000. In addition, as I stated earlier, it eliminates the need to use reserves or increases the amount of borrowing for those equipment certificates. The alternative would be to not approve the proposed resolution and utilize other funds to purchase the Gator and attachments. Again, this would result in the use of reserves and increase in certificates purchased in 23 or not making the purchase. Unless there's any questions, staff would recommend approval of resolution 2022-47. And then in addition, our liquor manager Lynette Moe is here to present a check. So
Okay.
if approved, we can get a picture and get some advertisement out of it.
Okay, we should approve first then. Is there I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Palava, second by Councilman Webb to approve resolution 2022-47. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Before Lynette comes up with a check, I think we've all been involved with this liquor store. Councilman Webb, kind of a new on the board there, but this has just been a tremendous success for this community, and I don't know if the community actually appreciates it. I mean, there's a lot of new people, but as most recall back in early 2000s, the on-sale, off-sale liquor store was losing a lot of money. I mean, some years it was losing like $100,000. And, the council took the initiative to build this new store, and then with all of us, develop it into really a successful entity. And if you look at the facility, I mean, you probably have $1 million facility, plus the inventory, plus the revenues. I mean, this is a pretty big deal for our community. I just, want to make sure, people can understand what a terrific deal this is. And it took a lot of work, I mean, with Joel and Lynette and the city council and staff. And I just want to make sure everybody gets a good job out of that, because that's really quite an accomplishment for our city. With that said, Lynette, if you want to come up, do you have a camera or something, or?
Yep.
You should try.
Joe, would you like to come up and join me?
Sure.
Alright. There you go, so, there we go.
You gotta get Joel, get in the middle there, Joel, you're the,
You're
the
the
cater driver. Yeah.
So fine.
Yes, tremendous, yes.
Cool.
Got it? Good.
Thank you.
Well, actually, on behalf of all the loyal customers I have, so use it wisely.
Well, again, great job, everyone.
Have you come around? Anytime.
All right, on to consider approval of resolution 2022-48, a resolution designating 116 Alabama Street Southeast, the IC Church Civic Center, as the polling place for any 2023 special primary and/or general elections held in Lonsdale. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. This is the annual resolution that the council is requested to adopt per state statute. By adopting the proposed resolution, it's designating 116 Alabama Street Southeast, or the IC Civic Center, as the polling place for all special, primary, and general elections that are held in '23. As of now, I'm not aware that there are any, but we've been down that road here recently with a couple unexpected elections, even this year. So, states that the polling place complies with the requirements specified in statute 204B.16, and that the polling place shall only be changed pursuant to the same statute, subdivision 1. As I say every year, the statute contradicts itself. It says approved annually, but then it also says only approved as when changed. We've just went err on the side of caution in adopting it every year, so we don't have any issues. The fiscal impact would be the cost of renting the Civic Center, which is $25 an hour. If there are any elections held, it would be anticipated the cost of less than $1,000 for all elections held. The alternatives would be to approve a different polling location, such as the City Hall or the council chambers here. This was our polling place for, I'm guessing, probably since the city purchased this building. So I had a run of 16, 17 years. The American Legion, unfortunately, statute says that a polling place cannot be connected to a building with an adjoining room that serves alcohol, or the elementary school. They're required by statute to provide that, but just given security and how it's configured with the gym being the lunchroom, really our only option would be here in this room. So, unless there's any questions, staff would make a recommendation to approve resolution 2022-48.
So move.
Motion by Councilman Kadadi,
Second?
second by Councilperson Fair. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discuss the Shadowstone development and Gibbon Avenue drainage. Mr. Harris.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and members of the council. Staff was contacted by Jody Ruby of 1600 Gibbon Avenue regarding the drainage of the Shadowstone development through her property recently. The drainage for this development has been a concern of Ruby's since it was constructed in '04. Over the years, they've experienced flooding during large rain events and seasonal freeze and thaw. In addition, Ruby's have made improvements to her property at her expense to reduce the erosion and the potential of flooding. The last time this needed to be addressed was in 2014, when the city approved a contract to enlarge the culvert underneath her driveway. Those improvements worked up until last winter or spring during the seasonal freeze thaw when the culvert underneath her driveway froze, backing up water, flooding into her property. Recently, the city engineer and myself met with Ms. Ruby to discuss her concerns and determine a possible solution. Based on the historical data, that meeting and existing conditions, the city engineer completed the attached report, cost estimate, and then the proposed plans. Based on the improvements as proposed, there's still a potential of flooding during the 100-year rain event. To alleviate that, it would be necessary to increase the berm of that retention pond, I believe, about 1.5 feet. Also potentially increasing the size of any downstream culverts to get the water to flow past her property. The council should discuss this item and provide staff and Ruby direction on how to proceed. As stated before, with the exception of the freezing this year, the fix that the city completed in 2014 has worked to that date. So
the city already did the improvement one previously, in 14.
correct.
And why do we feel that's not satisfactory? Just because of the 1 year it froze?
That is her concern, correct. And I wasn't here when this was constructed, but my understanding is that the drainage didn't flow that way prior to the development.
Okay, so do you feel there was an error in the development design? Or error by the city approval, or?
Not being part of the project at that time, I don't think I could make a statement of if it was constructed improperly. I guess what I'm confident in saying that if the culvert wouldn't have froze completely last winter, we wouldn't be discussing it today.
I guess my point, I'm just trying to justify, why we're spending city tax dollars. Is there a mistake? Is there something that the city caused? Is it just because somebody doesn't like, culverts on township roads or county roads, they freeze up.
Right.
That's part of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So
The design may have been different in 2014.
It just seems
but
to
we
be
were trying to-
$20,000 seems like a lot of money to,
Right.
to fix a culvert. We're expecting to reuse the same culvert?
I believe so, correct. I believe it's a HPDE, so we should be able to reuse it.
Yep.
And you would change the elevation of the culvert, is what you're saying?
Yeah, we took survey shots of the whole property. We would lower the culvert to the bottom of the ditch section, do some regrading downstream. There's a check dam downstream that's sort of holding back water. So restoration, when you combine all that together, you get to the $20,000 figure.
The check dam, who put that, did we put that in back in the day, or?
No, that was there. In 2014, when we were working with Ms. Ruby at the time, it was there were some sentimental items that she wanted to retain. So it kind of, I don't want to say constricted our capabilities for the design, but it certainly, at that time, doing what is proposed now was not an option.
Well, without seeing it, most of the time on our county or township, you would just clean the outlet ditch to make the water drain properly and run out. Can we remove the check dam and clean that ditch a little bit and see what happens? Or not?
Well, that would be part of it, but the ditch downstream of the driveway culvert is actually lower than the culvert now.
So then why would you, if the culvert drains out already?
Correct.
Why, if it drains out, I guess my point is, if it drains out, it shouldn't be freezing, is my point.
So the culvert on the downstream side is, the upstream side, I should say, is 2.5 feet too high. So the water comes through and it just can't get through the culvert. It backs up through there, so it only gets through once it's raised a certain portion.
So in doing these improvements, this would be just a waterway that would be used during wet times and be dried during the others.
Correct.
And this is not what the original homeowner wanted in 2014, correct?
That is, yes, that's correct.
So why
So-
are
I guess well, I
Some
can kind of see where this is
sandpaper?
going, but I guess, at this point, my recommendation would be to, it would really be nice if the property owner was here. Unfortunately, she's on vacation and wasn't able to attend.
I mean, you know, I think we as a council are all for helping people. I mean, $20,000 seems like a lot, especially since we fixed it once already to their satisfaction.
Did we offer this plan back then, or something similar to this? Do we know?
We probably talked about it, but it was, she wanted water, to retain water in that creek or drainage swale, whatever it's called.
And now it's too
So-
much water? Is
Well,
that-
what happens is if we lower that culvert, it'll drain through. But what's happening now is the culvert, is up to 2.5 feet.
Yep.
So that ditch fills up with 2.5 feet of water, and there's only this much more room. Where now you'll have this much more room.
So now the property owner wants the water drained as opposed to back then they wanted to hold water? Is that the short answer?
The short answer is she doesn't want any water. That's the short answer.
is that our responsibility? If we did it once before, I don't know, it just seems strange to me.
Is there any consideration for cost sharing and that kind of stuff, or I assume the property owner feels it's,
She feels that the city caused this problem because there wasn't a drainage problem prior to the development.
Oh,
and in your discussion, when you say we fixed it once, what does she say to that?
Thanks, but it still floods.
What
I mean,
happens if,
I don't think any of us would wanna have to go to work and wonder and hope our yard doesn't flood.
right,
But I think the point is that she made that decision. Right? It was her decision. I mean, I'm all for trying to figure something out, I'm just saying that.
Well, and what happens if we do it this way and then it's not right again? I mean, how many times are we on the hook to fix?
just gonna ask if like we get a late fall rain and it holds water going into the fall for some reason, and if the culvert would freeze again and back up, then what?
Yeah, if it freezes, the water's not going anywhere,
Right,
or you lose that much capacity in the culvert.
So you're saying that, is the culvert, too low now? Is it berm in front, so it's not running capacity? Or is there, I mean, to hold the water.
It's too high.
okay,
Yeah, if you look at the line drawing,
it's too
it's,
high for the,
the inlet is,
right. No, I know what you mean,
yeah.
but that was her choice, like I said.
Be like saying I want my driveway approach on the east side of my property, and then a number of years later saying, I don't like it there, I want it on the other side now. Because the snow plow pushes too much in, or whatever.
And she did say that she's incurred thousands of dollars of expense, erosion control and prevention, riprap, things like that.
I think the hardest thing is it was her choice. That's, the trouble. Come back
to
here-
have the water.
Come back here a year later and say, well, no, I don't want the water. And you don't see any other way to minimize the cost? I mean, you can't, I mean, 20 grand sounds like a lot of money just to.
Right, and I guess, maybe we bid it out and see what we get. There's contingencies in there. Mold fees, things like that.
Or can we go back and see if she'll split the cost?
Well, I think, at minimum, we probably should get quotes.
Right.
So at least we know, I mean, what if you get a quote at 7 grand? Well, that's a lot different, a lot more palatable than 21 grand, So I mean, I think we'd be okay doing that. I think one, the excavator lives right there.
Right,
Right?
and
You would
a
think
budding
that-
property, yeah.
Right. I mean, I would recommend we get quotes, and then bring it back with the real numbers. You know, you can, when she calls, you just tell her we're working on it, we're just trying to.
Yeah, it's progress, at least we have a
I mean,
number.
we're just, you know, it's taxpayer money, I mean, you wanna try to minimize the best we can there for the solution. I think we should probably have a motion to that effect, solicit quotes, or?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Kadada.
Second.
Second by Councilman Palava. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consider approval of resolution 2022-49, a resolution approving an agreement between, the city of Lonsdale and Mark and Jacqueline Popick to spread biosolids. Mr. Dornfeld.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In the past, the city has had a formal agreement to spread biosolids with Mark and Jacqueline Povic. The agreement was in place so the city would spread biosolids in the spring and the fall, and stipulated the amount paid per acre to Povics based on certain times of the year. This agreement had been in place beginning in 2015 and expired in 2020. The Povics are still interested in receiving biosolids from the city of Lonsdale in the spring and the fall. A few weeks ago, I spoke with Mark Povic, and he stated the compensation rates for applying biosolids in the spring need to increase. Now, the compensation for spring biosolids is for soil compaction and timing concerns with planting. These same concerns have been raised by other landowners in the past, and based on the proposed agreement, the city and Povics would be agreeing to the following compensation rates. No compensation prior to May 1st, $275 per acre between May 1st and May 15th, $350 per acre on or after May 16th, and no compensation for fall application. Historically, give or take 35 acres are needed for spreading biosolids, and the maximum cost to the city under this new agreement would be $12,250. The previous maximum cost under the old agreement was $8,750. Although the agreement is more than what the city has paid in the past, it is very difficult to find acceptable land to spread biosolids, especially in the spring. Under the old agreement, which was in place from 2015 to 2020, but is still being used today, the city has paid a spring spreading fee 3 times. 2018, $5,878, 2019, $63.52, 2022, $76.10. The term of the agreement is proposed to be 4 years. The reason for that is he has 2 fields that we apply to. It would be 2 in the field by Webster, 2 in the field by New Prague. It is staff's recommendation to approve the agreement between the city of Lonsdale and Mark and Jacqueline Povic for spreading biosolids. By approving resolution 2022-49, the city is agreeing to enter into the agreement to spread biosolids between the city of Lonsdale and the Povics. The fiscal impact is $35,000 has been budgeted for hauling biosolids in 2023. That covers the hauling. This number would have to be increased to $48,500 to cover the worst case scenario. The alternatives are do not approve the agreement, realizing new land would have to be found and approved and permitted in order to spread biosolids by the spring of 2023. If there are any discussion points, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, staff approves to approve resolution 2022-49.
I think the only question I have is, the delay is typically because, I assume, because of weather conditions in the spring.
Correct.
What about the trucking? Are they timely? I mean, is the delays ever caused by the trucking company?
Not in my experience. We have always had Busho Enterprises haul our biosolids. He's a very busy man, and he just kind of, when it's go time, it's go time, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know, it's just.
I guess my point is, if he's been pretty responsive, or if you need to put that in his contract, that he's got like a 3-day notice or whatever to try to fit into these timelines? Or is it just, you're satisfied with the way it seems to be working?
I'm satisfied with how it's been working. It's always, if he can't get in the field, we can't get in the field. You know, he's,
Right.
you know, in the last 16 years, it's always been Al, and it's call him up. You know, I just spoke with him today. What's our schedule? Okay, as soon as I'm done here, you're next. And he's very punctual and respectful of the city.
And these fields are permitted for 2023 and beyond, or?
Yes, they are both approved by the MPCA. The one we've been hauling for 5 years, and the other one probably 2.
Are you looking at all for additional fields?
Personally, I have not looked for any land. I was in contact with a Novak who we had hauled to in past years, next to Schmitz's where we've hauled in previous years as well. It's the same concerns with those farmers the spring, they don't want it in the spring. And Mark has been very good about taking our biosolids in the spring.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think- They kinda have to be.
Right. We don't have a lot of options unless it's something that we ever considered purchasing our own land to have, you know, to use this.
There are other things, you know, purchasing land, there are things we can do at our own treatment plant to make it so we don't have to haul liquid biosolids per se. But that is, I mean, we're talking huge dollars in order to switch that.
More than $50,000 a year, so.
You talk about buying, like the city would purchase land. Is there ever a time when you can only apply for 10 years on that parcel and then it has to sit for 5 years or something because it's too much?
It's all based on your loading rates. So, you know, every 3 years, soil samples are needed, tested. Everything's approved by the MPCA. You know, there's compliance checks. They have to be so far from wetlands. It can only have so much slope. It has to be so far from wells and public. And it's a challenge to get a field approved. I know personally because this last field in Webster I did myself, and the hoops you jump through are incredible.
I can believe it.
So, you know, just my experience alone, having somebody willing, I know it's a pricey endeavor, but the spring is where we really have our troubles. They all want the fertilizer for free in the
Right.
fall, but when you get to the spring, and then issues arise.
Well, and just from logistics, I mean, they're relatively close to the city too.
Both are within about 8 miles.
Yeah, that's
So,
pretty good.
yeah,
Yeah. That helps keep the trucking costs down.
yeah.
So there's all
Right.
the different pieces to the puzzle.
I move we approve resolution 2022-49.
Motion by Councilman Kadada,
Second?
second by Councilperson Fear. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consider approval of application for payment number 19 in the amount of $91,329.20 to Keith Contractor Inc. for the police facility. Don't look like Melissa to me, but.
Oh, well, you know, family stuff, so you're stuck with me. Mayor and council, we are getting close to the end, and so we've got a few pay requests that'll continue to come through as we close things out. Pay request 19 really kind of gets all of the line items in their contract to 100%. They are completely done. They have been working closely with the chief on any, you know, punch list or warranty things that have been coming up. So we're satisfied with that. This does still retain all of the retainage, so we haven't done any sort of retainage reduction. So even with this 91,000, there's still 155,000 in retainage as we move through the final stages of closing things out. We are working on a final change order. Likely will be an overall credit to the city for a couple of loose ends that we're still waiting for comments from them. If we don't receive comments from them, we're just gonna go ahead and proceed with the change order and get that done so that we can start working towards a final pay request, which will be either 1 or 2 pay applications from now, once we get all of the paperwork done. We are in a good spot with the building right now, and like I said, other than getting this final change order, they've been responsive to everybody's needs, and so we're satisfied with their request and are looking for approval of that tonight.
Is anybody got any concerns or anything, or everybody, one big happy family, huh? Okay.
Motion to approve application payment number 19.
Motion by Councilman Webb,
Second?
Councilperson Fair, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Great, thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Okay, that concludes the planned agenda. On to department reports. Mr. Dornfeld.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As we can see from coming in here tonight, fall is in the air, so Public Works has been very busy. We've started our fall street sweeping. We've been continuing with landscaping. Yesterday we got the fire hall, all the old stuff around the sign ripped out, put some new rocks and some grasses in there. We've been out spraying our fall application for soccer field and baseball fields and things like that. Cut a few dead boulevard trees down. One of the bigger things that we've been doing is there are some manholes that are rather low in some city streets. We've cut them out, replaced the rings, got them sitting pretty level. We're gonna see how they fare through the winter. We have a couple manhole covers that we're gonna experiment with some rubber matting on top of them so that if they do sink in the winter and the road heaves up, we can switch the cover out and hopefully create a smoother roadway. The parks and Main Street and everything was blown out. We were able to get in front of Malika's landscaping and rent the air compressor. So we just kind of jumped on that in order to avoid a weekend duty, and everything's blown out and winterized.
Good deal. Thank you for all your work, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Nick?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So still working on addressing punch list items and closing out last year's project. BCM will be in tomorrow to take care of a majority of the items, and we expect everything to pretty much be wrapped up by the end of next week. Good news is final project costs are gonna come in under budget, so it's always a good sign. And then Joe and I last week walked some of the trails, trying to develop a list for next year. We gathered some data, and we're currently running cost estimates and gonna get some cores of the trails so we know what we're dealing with. And we'll be able to come back and get a list prepared and get a project for next year. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Mr. Erickson?
Thank you, Mayor. Working on delinquent accounts, those notices have been sent out. Notice published in the paper. That public hearing is our next council meeting on the 24th. Working with the city engineer and staff. City engineer touched base on trails. We also had a meeting on chloride limits for our wastewater treatment plant. So that will be coming to the council at the next council meeting. Time flies, but we're nearing the end of Fire Chief Luke's term. So Fire Chief and Assistant Chief positions have been posted. Those applications are due tomorrow, I believe at 3. And I've been coordinating with the HR committee, doing those interviews next Wednesday night. So I'll get a hold of the firefighters that showed interest in participating in that. That'll come to the council meeting on the 24th as well. The Public Works Director and Community Development Planner, those positions have been advertised since after the last council meeting, or maybe the prior one. The applications are due 10/21. Been working on the getting information on the website. And the PD, old PD has been advertised in the paper and also on our website. Unfortunately, there's been virtually zero interest, so I don't know the exact 28th, or maybe it was around the 21st as well. Any sealed bids were due. So at that point, we'll have to make a decision, the council will have to make a decision on how to proceed, and maybe the solution is list it with the realtor and see what we get.
I suppose we should, if that is the case, is there a way to minimize the expense during the winter? I mean, lower the heat, for example, and stuff like that.
Yeah, at 40 or 45 or whatever it needs to be. Yeah,
We should probably make, get with Joe to figure out a plan of attack. It sounds like we're probably
Yeah.
headed that way.
nothing else, just in case something would happen, make sure that water lines are drained or something like that.
Right. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for all your work. Councilman Webb.
You already know about the liquor store and
You're
nothing
doing
new
a
from
good
the
job there,
library.
if you read all that. much.
Actually, liquor, and nothing new with the library board at this time. So.
Okay, so really happy with the raises? Did you get a couple of attaboys?
Yes,
Did you?
yes,
Okay.
and of course.
See, that you can share.
Well,
You can share the good news.
well, I can share, but I think the library director said that she's waiting for next year because I'm sure she has the same argument for next year too. So I said okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Kadada.
Planning and zoning will meet Monday at 6:45. That's all I have.
Councilperson Vera.
The EDA will meet next week on Thursday.
Councilman Falava.
I guess I'll go chamber stuff. We're getting ready for the Frosty Fest and the upcoming Lonsdale First. That kicks off beginning of November, and then Frosty Fest will be on the Saturday after Thanksgiving with the tree lighting and all that stuff. So we're getting ready to get all that stuff together.
And what's the ribbon cutting? Travel with Shannon?
Yeah, there's a few going on. There's Travel with Shanna coming up, and also Lonsdale Auto Sales. He's got one scheduled too. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact dates, but
Good.
those are coming up also.
Great. Couple of things. I see they're starting to do the sewer and water hookups in the buildings there, so hopefully they get their shell up in the business park. I think, Joel, you mentioned that there was a plan submitted for the villas potentially.
Yeah, there was a concept plan for residential development west of the villages. I think it was late last week. I haven't had a chance to really dive into it too much, but.
Mexican water houses. I suppose the new permits, I suppose, are still down quite a bit from.
Since I've been doing permits, we have not issued a single-family residential.
It's slowing. Interest
July
rates,
1st.
all that kind of jazz, all affects it. Better days ahead, though, right?
Exactly.
That's all I got.
I move we adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Kadada.
Second?
Councilperson Fair. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?